Episode of the Language of Spirit show. My name is Andrew Fritz. If you're watching on YouTube and you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe. If you're listening on to the Apple Podcasts or Spotify, feel free to kind of leave us a quick review. It's a simple way to support the show and help us grow. Today we have a special guest with us. Jenny is the owner of JKorotko Counseling and Art Therapy, PC, in addition to her spiritual coaching practice called Approachable Healer. I like the name. So that's approachablehealer.com. And we'll link that in the description below. So Jenny first started to notice her intuitive talents at a young age when she would experience, say, astral traveling, talking with spirits, and kind of just knowing things without understanding how. Jenny's family has a long history of healers and those rumored to have psychic abilities. Jenny specializes in trauma as a counselor and somatic experiencing trauma therapist. Jenny's trained in a modality called the love-heart connection, created by Jane Vair Bissler, which utilizes the EMDR. We might have to talk about that because I've never heard of that before. That'd be a good topic. With connecting to spirit, and that people can learn how to, on their own, connect with loved ones who have passed. Jenny loves providing energy healing sessions, psychic readings, mediumship sessions, in addition to helping people through trauma in her private therapy practice. So Jenny, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you. My pleasure. Okay, so I think a good way to kind of start things off, a big topic, I think, in spirituality, and especially on this show so far, has been astral travel. It sounds like, it started to happen with you kind of at a young age. Can you tell us about kind of what some of your initial experiences and maybe when that was for you in regards to astral travel?
It's hard to pinpoint exactly when it started because it feels like I've just always been able to do it. So I think I'm imagining that it started really young.
Yeah.
I have some vivid memories and some pretty powerful ones, but from as young as I can remember, and I'm kind of like thinking like around age 3 or 4.
Oh, wow.
I have some pretty vivid memories early on of just taking a nap, and all of a sudden I'm like sitting next to my mom watching soap operas while she's folding laundry, but I'm like physically still asleep.
Right.
And because I had like nothing to like I just thought that was normal.
Yeah.
So I would talk about it, and I don't think at the time my mom really quite understood. She just like, no, you were napping. And it's just like, okay, like I remember having these conversations, like trying to figure things out. And I actually knew some of the plot of the soap operas because I would like literally be seeing them, and she would be like, how do you know that?
Yeah. Wow.
So those are some of the more light memories of it. Yeah, just being able to like, and definitely during naps. And I was just telling my husband this the other night that I'm like, because it's been a while since I've had one, and I really love having them. They feel very healing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I used to just do them all the time, like on demand when I was younger, especially in the middle of the day. I would just like lay down, meditate, or sleep, and just kind of go right into one.
Wow. That's really cool. And did it evolve in any, like, over the years, or did it become less and less over time, like compared to when you were younger?
Yeah, I had a scary thing happened. And so after that, when I noticed I was leaving my body, I'd like not go that far. I'd stay within the room. There was something, what happened was like, it was really hard to physically open the door or go through the door of my bedroom. And when the scary thing happened, it was like, and I can get into that, but just something was so scary. So I just felt safe staying in my room for a while. And then eventually I just stopped having them for a while until like maybe high school and a little bit in my 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that seems, at least from my perspective and experiences, it seems common where one incident, and it could be something kind of simple, but that can um, kind of tune down or sometimes shut off different abilities. Has that been something in your own experience or seen people that you've worked with? Is that something you notice or?
Yeah, it could be just like accidentally getting shamed for just innocently describing maybe perhaps a psychic moment.
Right.
I work with a lot of clients, both trauma and in spiritual coaching, where they can pinpoint exactly when they stopped believing in their abilities or they're
Mm.
trusting their intuition. Something accidentally shut it down. Usually not the other person's intention, but it usually comes from like a shaming energy, sometimes religion.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm. Feeling
And
wrong for doing it.
yeah. Yeah, it's we get invalidated, and that can be tough. Um, Now, I know you've had one experience, so let me know if you're comfortable with sharing this experience. I believe it was a kind of an astral travel experience, where you left your body, and I think maybe there was like a funeral.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable or open to going over that? Because that's pretty, I think, an interesting one for the audience to hear.
Yeah, no, there's two pretty intense ones. I'm happy to share. That one
Okay.
was very intense. Um, there was my Aunt Minnie passed away, and she was like loved by everybody. And I was really sick and home with a fever, so I couldn't go to the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was feverish, and I tend to, when I'm really sick, really tired, really like off, that's usually when a lot of astral projection just happens without much
Ah,
control,
right.
especially when I was little.
Hmm.
So I remember all of a sudden, like kind of in and out of a feverish state, being at the funeral, seeing Aunt Minnie in a casket, like seeing everybody, like I was just there.
Right.
And then I was like, it's all very vague, but I do remember eventually at some point I'm back in my bed and I look over and I see my Aunt Minnie laying next to me, but dead.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it was like now I can equate it to just like it felt like a weird mushroom trip. Like it was just kind of in and out of just different, but I saw everything.
Yeah.
So when my mom came home to check on me, I was talking to her as if I was there, and it kind of freaked her out.
Right. I can
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah.
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 And now I'm thinking about the story, like the bed I was in was my Aunt Minnie's old bed.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
that's a weird, I never really put that together. But yeah, so I was there at the funeral even though I wasn't there physically. Like the astral
Right.
was there and I could tell my mom everything about what she was wearing in the casket, like who was there, and
Yeah.
it really freaked my mom out, and that was definitely another moment where I felt like I did something wrong.
Ah, right.
So I think it shut down in addition to the other scary thing that happened. I think then that was like just it.
Right. That's understandable. It's interesting because, like, it starts off, it just seems so normal and natural. And we try to explain the best we can with the vocabulary that we have at the younger ages. Um, and then, yeah, it always kind of depends, it seems, on how open, say, the parents are, or just whoever's surrounding that you're communicating with this, how it's received, and then how they handle that situation. So we're so
Yeah.
sensitive at that young age, it can, whatever the kind of their response might be, can really influence us, it seems.
Yeah. And to be fair, I mean, my mom identifies as psychic herself. Like it
Ah,
comes
okay.
down the family line. She's really into energy healing. Most of my
Ah,
aunts are trained in Reiki. Like it's in the line. So it wasn't, so I think what happened, it just freaked her out. Right. And so I
yeah.
think her reaction made me at a young age feel like I did something wrong and
Mhm.
internalize that, but I don't think it was her intention to like shut
Right.
it down. It just was like,
Sure.
you
Just
know.
like, yeah, this is kind of yeah, it could be a little bit of a shock initially, I think. Um, so with these experiences, can you recall some of the experiences of? Did you notice yourself in an energy body? Some people might talk about, say, like an etheric body, or an astral body. Did you see kind of, any limbs, or legs, or did you kind of perceive yourself as, maybe I'm just a point of light or an orb of awareness? Like, what was that like for you?
It's changed. It's
Okay.
changed quite a bit. When I was little, I do have memories of when I would astral project of like feeling like I was just it was me, but I was like not there at all.
Hmm.
Um, One time I remember looking down and I could like kind of see an outline of my body and
Hmm.
I could fly and I love to fly. recently I've had several. One really powerful one where I just my whole goal was to keep going up.
Mm,
I've done a lot of traveling like in my neighborhood, in my house, visiting people, but I just was like, what would it be like to go up? So it was like a lot of effort and I just kept going up. And then when I was up kind of in the I don't know, like in space or whatever, I was looking down at the
mhm.
city and I looked at myself and it was as if, and I think I described this to you before, like that scene in Predator
Oh,
where the
yeah, yeah.
person is like camouflaged. It was like that.
Uh-huh.
Where I just looked like I was like this, like you could, if I moved, I would see this weird hazy outline that just looked like it was blending in with the sky. So
Right.
it was lots of different colors and kind of stars, but it was me.
Mm,
And it didn't feel like I had no attachment to like stories or ego. Like it just was like, I guess more of a light beam. Like it was just this
mm.
awareness that I was a part of this thing that was bigger. And I mean, there was a tiny bit of me in there, but it wasn't like how I experienced me in this body.
Right. Did you seem kinda like a detached awareness, like kinda neutral or just kinda like, "I'm just observing, I'm just this is interesting." Is that kinda
Yeah.
like what it was like?
Yeah. And I
Interesting.
missed it when I came back in my body because I remember that night. For some reason, I astral project a lot in my son's room. Like if he's having a
Mm,
nightmare or something, or
mhm,
just not nightmare, but like if he can't sleep and I'll go lay next to him, especially when he was little,
mhm.
I would have a lot of those experiences there. And that was one particular night that I was just in a really dark place. I was just really depressed. There was just a lot of stress in my life. So when I came back in my body, I was like, I really want to be back up there. Where like none of, but it was very healing. I really needed that perspective, that just to kind of get away from the
Right.
ruminating and the focusing on all the negative. And it was really light. It was really healing that it was so necessary to have that experience at that point in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to be a theme because I talked to, quite a few people that are, like, into lucid dreaming or out of body experiences, and, for some people, like, I think some the healing is just kinda like, just getting out of the body and kind of escaping into the dream state or being out of the body, and just that is pretty healing to be able to have that kind of different perspective and just kind of, hey, I just need to step out of some of the dramas that are occurring down there and just, okay, let me be here for a second, and then I'll come back kind of fresh, with a
Yeah.
different perspective. So
It helped me for months after that. I mean, it was like a
mm,
dose of Prozac. It felt like it just like it was like my antidepressant for a really long time because I would start to dip back into like some depressive thinking and then I would remember that experience and be like, it really doesn't matter in the end. Like like
right,
this thing, like worrying about paying this bill or that it really doesn't matter. Like I need to just stop taking all this negativity in.
right, yeah, yeah. They always I don't. Well, I have had someone on the show that has near death experiences. We didn't really get into it too much. That's they always talk about like the near death experiences. Like some usually there's like these life reviews, at least for some people, not maybe everybody. And I'm wondering if when you go to look at your life review, you look back and go, "Why was I doing that and worrying about that?" Or what?
Yeah.
It's like, "Why was I
Yeah.
doing that?"
Yeah.
um,
Well, I mean, and not to get too far off the subject, but a lot of like older women give younger women advice like stop obsessing over your weight. Like it's such a
uh,
waste of time,
right.
Like
Yep.
just love yourself as you are. And when you're 50 and you look at yourself at your 20s, you're going to think you're crazy for thinking you were something other than perfect, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I find that in relationships, all kinds of relationships, whether it's your spouse or even just your relationship with yourself, relationship to your own body. I always find it this path of like learning to forgive yourself and other
Yeah.
people, or just the acceptance, going deeper in the acceptance of, what, this is just, hey, this is who I am, or this is how I am right now. This is what's going on right now. It's okay.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was just totally challenging, but that's like super healing as you go down the road with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Now I know we've talked, previously. I know you're kind of more into the out of body stuff versus maybe some of the lucid dreaming. But is there any lucid dream experiences that come to mind that you'd want to share, or anything about that?
They're just goofy. I mean, I I think in high school especially, I kind of did more of that. I
Mm.
stopped astral projecting and did more lucid dreaming. And
Ah.
whenever I would realize in a dream I was dreaming, I would immediately make sure I had a tuxedo on and like
Oh.
then just like do like whatever I wanted. There was one dream where I like created the situation where I got all A's and like wore a
Ah.
tuxedo to school. Like it just was silly fun, but it just felt
That's
really good to be able to create whatever I wanted
right. And
in
it
my
was
life.
was that a conscious thought of like I need the tuxedo, or did that just
Yep.
like happen?
No, that was definitely very like, wouldn't it be funny if I, and it was kind of, it became my way of knowing, like, I'm definitely lucid dreaming. If I can think that
Ah.
I should be in a tuxedo, then that's my sign that I'm,
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah,
actually
yeah.
didn't know what it was called then. I just knew that it was like one of those dreams that I could control whatever I wanted to control in.
Yeah, I got the fancy suit on. Yeah.
Yeah.
that's that's so funny. That's really cool. Uh,
It's good to, I mean, like, I think sense of humor like sticks with you in any form. And I've had some astral projections where there's been humor involved too. It's just it's interesting. Like it's I think it's because it's such a light, joyful energy.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's really yeah. The trick I think is having the amusement when you're in the body. That's the challenge. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Because like those experiences that I've had, especially with lucid dreaming, it's very euphoric. Especially the moment. My favorite moments in life, and especially with lucid dreaming, is the, like waking up.
Mm,
Especially when you realize, like, oh my gosh, I'm dreaming, and it
mhm.
doesn't seem to really get old. You're just like, wow, this is awesome. I'm dreaming right now. I'm freed up. I have freedom. Like it's just like
Yeah.
such a good feeling.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Um. Yeah. So I want to kind of transition into the topic of mediumship.
Mhm.
I know that's something that you've dabbled in and explored, and um, so you mentioned in your bio about talking with spirits. Can you talk about that a little bit first?
Yeah. I was talking to spirits, I think, a lot longer than I mean, I was talking to them for a while before I realized they were spirits.
Ah.
So
Mhm.
my first experience was we lived in these woods where I was growing up by a creek
Mm.
and a pond, so lots of water and just it felt really magical there. And it's funny, my mom would try desperately to like have play dates for me and invite other friends over, and I would like ditch them and then go play in the woods by myself because I just really wanted to be in the woods. I was so content and happy, like I didn't need anything else.
Right.
Um, and then I started meeting this little boy. He had like very blonde hair. It was like eerily blonde. He definitely was dressed in some weirder clothes than me, but I didn't think anything of it. It was very little, playing in the backyard. I mean, they could still see me from the, it's not like I was in the deep woods by myself
Oh.
that young, but still
Right.
like in the woods and was talking to this little boy and we'd meet up and play all the time. And then eventually I don't really remember how I realized that he probably wasn't alive,
Mm.
but like just started to kind of, and this kind of happened for a while. I started to just kind of like realize like I don't think this person, like he never really identified as like having a family that lived near, like he just, it was just him, and he would just
Right.
kind of appear.
Ah.
I never would hear him walking up, and there was
Mm.
no other story to him other than he would just sit and play with me in the middle of the woods.
Interesting.
And so then I realized like I think, and again, my mom is very open to this kind of world. I'd go to psychic fairs with her really young. So like
Mm.
when I started to realize I think I'm talking to a spirit, it didn't freak me out.
Mm.
Like I was just like, oh, like then when I
Good.
would, the older I got, the more psychic fairs I went to, the more stories I heard. It just felt really comforting to know that I wasn't alone
Right.
experiencing stuff like that.
Yeah. That is so cool. Is you mentioned like the clothing, like did it seem like something from like an older, like from the past, or does it seem something just a little different, or what?
I go back and forth in my head wondering if this is like from another world because his hair was so oddly like
Uh,
blonde,
yeah.
or like it definitely was tattered. It looked like old, um, like 1800s kind of era,
Oh, okay. Uh huh.
a little bit. I know there's a lot of history in the area I grew up in Ohio, so
Hmm.
who knows? But he, once I started to kind of make connections, he didn't appear as much. I think there was just this kind of like energetic awareness that like, oh wait, you're not really like you don't like live on a body on this earth right now. And so I just, he just stopped coming around. But I didn't
Yeah.
really get sad or anything. It just was like, oh, okay.
He's like, you caught on to me.
Yeah. It's kind of what it feels like when I think back. Yeah. But that was my
That's
first experience. And then just like, I mean, seeing my Aunt Minnie at the funeral, I feel like was a little bit of a mediumship moment to some degree.
oh yeah.
Um, Definitely have had a lot of powerful encounters in a dream state and then in meditations, just hearing people talking to me, going to sleep at night, like that in between state, like seeing things, just
Yeah.
knowing things, having them stand there, but almost telepathically hearing things that way.
Mhm. Right.
Just lots of stories.
Yeah. No, this is the good stuff because it's some people they're open to this and other people are not. So it's always fun to be able to chat with someone that's like, "Hey, this is totally normal," because it
Yeah,
is.
it is in my world for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I was in Chicago, when I was going through, I believe it was my initial clairvoyant training, that was I had these experiences where I was like falling asleep and then I'd hear my name called out. I mean, as clear as day, crystal clear, as if someone was standing there, and I'd be like, "What was that?" Like that was like a very different experience for me. It sounds like something maybe similar when you kind of in
Oh
that
yeah.
transition state to sleep. Is that?
Yeah. Or coming out of sleep. I think,
Uh huh.
I mean, there's so many stories I'd love to share with you. One that was interesting was it was the first time I realized how open my husband was to some of my abilities, and knowing that I've always had a gut instinct, he has some too, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember a moment when I was in between sleeping where I looked at the foot of the bed and there was a bunch of like old-timey looking gangster guys,
Oh, okay.
like Al Capone's like
Uh huh.
suits and everything, just talking about something important. I was so normal for me. I was just like, whatever. Like it's probably a imprint of like something that happened in this room back in the day, or maybe
Gangster
it's a
meeting.
ghost. Yeah, like it was like I just went back to sleep. So the next morning I'm telling him it's the weirdest thing happened, and he's like, I saw that too.
Oh
And he
wow.
was like describing it to the T exactly. And we were like, whoa, we like both were probably peeking our eye open at the same time
Yeah.
and like didn't talk about it in the moment. So that was
Wow.
really interesting. But there was another recently, I don't know what to call this. Definitely like an entity of some sort.
Mhm.
My son, the I have a son who's very medically I don't want to say ill, but just has a lot of medical issues. So there's a
Sure.
lot of worry around him. And this was a moment where there was a lot of worry around him. And I woke up 3, 4 in the morning and he's laying next to me. And by his side of the bed, there was this woman, older woman with this like cloak on, like very ancient looking
Mm,
outfit.
mhm,
She was glowing, like this gold glowing color, like her whole body, skin, everything was just glowing. And she was
mm.
just moving her hands up and down his back
Oh wow.
and just very like intense energy towards him.
Mhm.
I could tell she had no idea I was watching her. And then all of a sudden she just slowly disappeared.
Wow.
It was
So that
really cool. Yeah.
yeah. So it seems like in that situation that like that being was giving healing to your son. Is that what it kind of looked like from you? Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely.
that's really cool.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess on that note, sometimes we have our own spirit guides, angelic beings that are there to kind of sometimes through parts of our life, sometimes through the entire life or maybe multiple lives, who knows. Um do you have any experiences or just with your own spirit guide group that you want to share that comes to mind or
Yeah, I've met a few. The one that I really just feel very connected to, like that I call on a lot when I'm really not
Mhm,
doing well.
mhm,
I haven't really figured out his name exactly.
mhm.
But there was this moment and it felt kind of a mixture between a lucid dream and now it felt like something different. I don't even
Yeah.
know how to describe it, but I was walking down a street and I just knew to go in this house, and in this house at first appeared to be this like really cool, like all these bookshelves, and there was like this huge chest on the ground, and then there was this man sitting in this chair, like old gentleman, just really just felt very wise. And I just remember like all of a sudden everything seemed really clean and new and perfect and like rich, and then I looked around and everything turned very tattered and old and wise. It was the strangest thing.
Yeah.
And he just sat there and he's like, look in the chest. And
Mhm.
so I opened the chest and like there was nothing in it, but a lot of things like kind of came in me. I don't know how else to describe it. And he just was kind of like smiling. It just felt like a lot of energy, a lot of healing, a lot of things were coming in me.
Mhm.
To this day, I don't know what the chest really meant, but like it was really important in the moment.
Mhm.
And then he just was like, I'm always with you. And like just had this very down to earth, like, I don't know how, like matter of fact tone, like, don't
Mhm.
worry about anything. Like, I'm always here whenever you need me. Um, I kind of giggled in the dream thinking it's kind of like one of those video games where you find a chest and you get your power, or like you go on
Oh, yeah,
part.
like
I'm just like, what is this
coins
chest?
and treasures in it
Right,
and maps.
exactly. This is but it was like something about the chest was really important. But yeah, and then I've seen him since, like when I do meditation, sometimes in your courses,
Mhm.
with my shamanic healing group, when we do like shamanic journeying, he just pops up. Sometimes it's more of just like a knowing he's there and I can feel that same energy.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's seeing him in like my mind's eye.
Yep.
Um, but he is like he means a lot to me. Like when I think about him, I get like emotional in a good way, like just like excited, and it feels
Right.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I always wonder kind of like from their perspective as they kind of just observe, you know. I think
Mhm.
sometimes they're just kind of watching us and sometimes I wonder if they're going like, what are they doing down there? Like
Yeah.
I've been telling you to uh,
I think when I was in my 20s and like messing up big time, like on every which way you possibly can mess up, like I was not doing well.
uh,
I think I encountered one. This is a weird story, but I was walking down the street and I was smoking, and I knew I shouldn't be smoking. I had asthma all my life. It's just the dumbest thing to start doing in your 20s. And
mm,
this like older gentleman just like stopped me on the street, and there's something that felt different about him. And he's like, I thought I told you to quit smoking. And then he just kept walking. I was like, was that a spirit guide? Like,
uh,
I was
yeah,
like, that was really weird. And like, I didn't like, who was that? But it
yeah,
just felt, it felt very spiritual in the moment.
that's funny. That'd be funny if your spirit guide channeled through somebody
Yeah, that's
just to relay
just a
this message. Like, come on now.
right.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Yeah, spirit I think is definitely comical if we can there's always amusement to find in situations. So,
Exactly. I think mine have some pretty good senses of humor.
yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, you've taken the year-long clairvoyant training with me. I'm always curious to see what I know you've done many different trainings, but I'm always curious to see what people's lives were kind of like leading up to the training itself. You know,
Mm.
sometimes certain things are falling apart or coming undone, certain things are kind of clicking and aligning. Um, if you don't recall too much, that's totally fine. But I'm just curious to see if you notice anything that was happening leading up to, oh, wait, there's a clairvoyant training. I'm going to join that.
Yeah. Well, Erin brought me in, and Erin was somebody who I always was really drawn to in my somatic experiencing
Hmm.
training. She was one of the assistants who was helping in my training when I was a student.
Hmm.
So I always was really I always was really connected to her or drawn to her, and then I found out she did some of the psychic medium, more psychic healing stuff,
Yeah.
and was like, oh, cool. So there's other people out there that are both trained therapists and then in this. Like this was like eye-opening to me and very comforting. So
Hmm.
when she invited me, I was like, of course, like that just makes so much sense. What was going on in my life prior to that was just a lot of stress and a lot of unresolved trauma bubbling up, I trained as a therapist, but I was not healed myself. So hearing more stories similar to mine was very triggering and activating. And I was kind of a mess. So like, and I had taken a lot of different trainings, but yours was like, it came at a good time, and your approach in a very good way was different. It was, I just felt like I had a lot of permission to just do things my own way. I don't
Hmm.
know how else to describe it. You don't have this like you have to do it the certain way approach at all.
Right.
And I think I needed that permission more. It needed, and it also was like very validating throughout the whole time I was in your training, just very validating that like things are going to bubble up. Sometimes they don't make sense.
Yep.
Whereas in other training experiences, I've had very dominating instructors being like, well, this is because you don't do this and you should do very like a lot of advice.
Right.
And it really messed with me because I don't think it gave me enough time to organically figure things out on my own.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's what we're used to, right? We're looking people giving us advice, so then, we're almost seeking the advice, and then we get to a place. I think this is why, I grew up in a household was not religious or spiritual, and then kind of one of the, I got into a relationship, and this she was very religious, and her family was, and I'd go to like church with her just to kind of be there and see what it's like and support her, and they would, some of her friends would ask me, so like, why aren't you like giving into this or committing to this? And I was just
Hmm.
like, I don't know. It just doesn't, don't have an answer for you. It's just not, something's not clicking for me.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I got into my, not there's anything wrong with religion, but just on a
Hmm.
personal level, when I got to learn how to meditate, I'm like, oh, wait a second. Like I can use meditation as a way to find what is true for me instead of
Yeah.
someone else telling you, hey, it has to be this way. And I was like, oh, wow, this is awesome. Like, sign me up. I'll jump down the
Yeah.
rabbit hole now.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no idea what you're getting into. Um, but yeah. Um, so what was it like? A clairvoyant training? Not a lot of people are aware of that, what that is, that it even exists.
Hmm.
It can be a roller coaster ride, ups and downs. You learn a lot of different things. I know mine was. I was a complete mess throughout the whole process of mine, and
Hmm.
I'm sure plenty of people that were there with me during that happened could vouch for that.
Yeah.
What was it like for you going through your clairvoyant training?
I mean, it was like, I was in therapy, so I was looking at trauma from that lens, but this was like
Mhm.
looking at like what trauma does to the soul. It was like it
Uh,
wasn't, I know that wasn't the intention of the training, but that's kind of what came through for me. And I think that's why I was kind of a mess. I remember a few personal sessions we had where I like was throwing up. Like
oh
the
man.
energy, the like
Mhm.
unblocking things, like my nervous system was so out of whack because things had been clogged up for so long
Right.
energetically, and just
Yeah.
like dormant abilities now having freedom to just do whatever, and
Right.
really just kind of recalibrating everything. So there was a lot of moments of just feeling out of control emotionally, but then there was this knowing that this was a part of the process and I was okay.
Right. Yeah. That's the challenging part is the growth periods, and that was
Yes.
I remember complaining about like I remember noticing them. I just talked about this to someone else because I had a friend that I went through the training with. We were roommates in college, and then we had an apartment together after. And our class was Tuesday nights, I believe. So the night before, we'd start hitting the energy of the class, not knowing what's going on. And eventually, we caught
Oh,
on to it.
yeah.
So we'd start to call it like the Monday night blues. We were just kind of just hey, something's weird. I'm feeling kind of funky, and then we just kind of knew like, oh, yep, it's the energy of the tomorrow night's class. No problem. We'll get through this. Well, so,
Yeah, that's really cool though. I mean, not cool that you had to go through the blues, but
yeah,
to
yeah,
finally figure it out and be like, oh, like that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
um, so obviously you have a lot of experience kind of working with trauma and kind of your own work. Do you find that that's a big thing that can separate one from their own body? Is that's kind of where they kind of detach a little bit, kind of an aspect of them, and there's kind of this disconnect between body and spirit? Is that something you notice, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that's why at such a year early age, I mean, I remember as far back as I can that I was astral projecting. I think I had a lot of what's called pre-verbal trauma.
Mm,
And I think to kind of just like survive it because it was so emotionally confusing for somebody or for anybody at any age, but that young who's
mm-hmm.
like not really talking full sentences yet,
Ah,
I think I just would leave. Like it's
right.
disassociation. Um, but beyond that, and I think once somebody has trauma, especially when they're that young, they have this natural ability now
Mm,
to
right.
just leave. And I think that's how I was able to just like really get into astral projecting without really realizing at first what I was doing.
Right.
Just kind of opened up this door,
Yeah.
because I had experienced it through something awful. But I think it's also how the mind and body stay okay in times of trauma. Is, there's lots of times where near death experiences, especially, people just like have this like weird thing where it's like I was floating above my body, or
Yep.
I was all of a sudden in this area, this other dimension, right? And
Right.
so I
Yeah.
think it's similar.
Oh yeah. Um, and what have you found, whether it's maybe people you've worked with or even just on a personal level, what helps you kind of bridge the gap, like kind of body and spirit coming together? Like what are certain things that you have done or do that helps you kind of really get more in your body and connected and grounded?
I am very, and this is funny you mentioned you're asking this question. I'm very much in my root chakra lately. I'm just
Ah,
really just focusing on my feet on the ground and making sure I'm grounded every day and feeling it, like having a felt sense of being grounded.
mm,
That's been helping me lately because I have a tendency still to just float pretty quickly
yeah.
and, and just kind of like not really be here, but here.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I think that's pretty common for a lot of people with trauma,
Hmm.
just like not really feeling fully in their body. So
Right.
that's how I work on that primary. A lot of meditating, a lot of focusing on the root chakra. Really quick funny story.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Chumpi stones? It's a
I'm not,
Peruvian like healing. Um, there's these stones and they align with the seven chakras.
hmm.
Um, my I have them in a little bag. I think they're in the other room.
Mm,
And sometimes I take them out. I'm like learning like how to
yeah.
heal with them. I'm just, just kind of getting into this. And I don't remember having them out recently at all. And
Mm,
I've been pretty floaty lately and not in my body. And I was just like realizing that. And I was saging my space before clients came.
mm.
And all of a sudden I'm kicking something and I look down and it's the root chakra Chumpi stone.
Uh,
And I'm like, I haven't taken it out. It was just really kind of eerie that it was that one that was on
yeah.
the ground. So since then, that was like a week ago at this point, I've just been carrying it and purposefully kind of meditating with it and just making sure. I think it was like a sign, like you need to be more grounded.
Uh, your spirit guide.
Yep. But
That's
yeah,
funny.
it's really important, I think, for people who do astral project a lot or have had near-death experiences, um, mediums, I think it's really important we purposefully, intentionally focus on grounding every day in some sort of way.
Right. No, I agree with that. Yeah, you mentioned kind of just like seeing that stone or crystal there as
Mhm.
kind of like a sign, um, and that's something that for me, it's always like certain periods of my life. It's not always I'm noticing it very strongly, but there's certain periods of my life where it's like every go around every corner and there's a sign and you're
Mm.
just like, oh my god, it doesn't get any more obvious than this, whether it's turn the corner and it's the street sign or it's a billboard there, or the conversation comes up and you're just like, what is going on?
Mhm.
And have you had those, like, just like moments of synchronicity or just times where it's just like here's a sign and there's a sign and there's another sign, to the point you're just like, I get it, okay.
Mhm.
I got it.
Yeah, there's been tons of those. Whenever and I know this is a classic one you hear all the time, but it's true for me. Whenever I see dimes on the floor, I know it's my grandpa.
Ah.
Um, but the one that means a lot, I mean, that means a lot to me too, but the one that really like hits me when I see it is my best friend Allison died when I was 22, 23,
Mm,
something like 22, I think.
mm.
Um, and whenever I'm like really caught up in some dark thoughts, I'll see her name. It
Oh.
almost it's like almost every time. One time I was driving, and a lot of times when I'm driving, I start to ruminate, and I was like tearfully just thinking of just negative self-talk. And I right in front of me was a personalized plate that said Allison. Like
Ah.
I'm just like, yep, okay, right,
Yeah, the license plate, you mean? Or
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah, that's funny. Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or I'll hear a song with her name, or it's just there. It's always there.
Right. That's
Or her
cool.
recently actually I was a photography major and I took a lot of pictures of her in art school. um and I was cleaning out a drawer again in a really just sad state,
Mm.
and randomly. I don't know how it got in there. One of the old pictures I took of her, a black and white one, I took to the dark room and everything, like the whole shebang before digital was a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It was there
Oh wow.
in like a desk that like there's like no, it's a newer desk. We moved recently. Like there's no way.
Yeah,
It was really weird.
that's so interesting. I love when that stuff that happens. And then kind of just kind of like synchronicity and but have you noticed, I definitely in my own life I can there's certain experiences that kind of go either way, but like times where you've in some way maybe gone against spirit and maybe went more towards say ego or sort of just kind of conditional programming and how that led, where that kind of led you, because I know in certain my situations anytime that's happened for me it's like, oh, I'm always somehow let down or I'm frustrated or disappointed. And then there's the other side of the coin where I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to take some sort of leap of faith. I'm going to go through the thing that is just like intuitively, I know this is what I need to do. And there's all these kind of pleasant surprises that go along with it.
Hmm.
Not to say that there's not challenges, but usually it's more rewarding or more joy and fun on that side of things.
Hmm.
Um, just talking about that kind of that fork in the road or kind of this way or that way. Does anything come to your mind just about that topic?
Oh yeah, and I think it kind of has a lot. Like I'm going to answer your question, but there's like a lot of layers to this answer because
Oh yeah.
because so for 3 years I've been trying to hire more people for my private therapy practice.
Mm,
I'm realizing like I can't see clients back to back because if I don't see clients, I don't get paid, and
sure.
like if I'm sick, then I don't get paid that day. So I'm just like I need,
Right.
what is it, passive income. I need to like run a practice where I get a little bit of a cut from people, but like I'm providing this, that, and the other. So
Sure.
like so I came from a place of like scarcity complex and just desperation. Like I have to hire somebody. And it was just like if I don't, like this is terrible. It just was very much negative energy.
Mm,
Um, so I put out some ads. I paid way too much money for ads, and whoever applied, I just hired,
mm.
and they weren't good fits at all.
Uh,
One person just full on just didn't show up for clients and always had weird excuses.
uh,
It like gave my practice a really bad name, but I was just so desperate to make it happen, and I ended up losing a ton of money on
mm,
these not well thought out hires.
right.
So then I took a break, and then recently I just have been in this, like I've been listening to a lot of meditations on manifesting and keeping your energy light, and I've done a lot of work with your trainings, and I'm just in a different spot, and this is like 3 years later. Ever since then I'm like, I'll just throw it out there. Like I'll just throw it out there and just see. And I put it on LinkedIn for free. Like I'm hiring if anybody's interested. Nothing
Yeah.
professional, nothing really like no effort, just really just like threw it out there. I'm hiring 5 new clinicians. I had
Oh
5
wow.
people apply within 2 days, and they're all like amazing fits and very down to earth, very cool, like
Mm,
ready to go. Like I don't get a sense from any of them that they would just not show up for a session. Like,
right. That's good.
right? So it just
Yeah.
feels like I was throwing it out there to see what's out there, but it wasn't desperate. It wasn't scarcity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can relate to that. It sounds like, especially with the last approach you had, was so, like you said, kind of non-effort, but just a
Mhm.
total quality of spirit. And just like
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, well, how could it be that easy? And it's just like, well, that is spirit. There is an ease to it. There's a grace to it. Whereas we're so used to kind of just it has to be challenging and effort and
It's a
um
great point.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. Um, one question I like to always ask everybody is, through your own personal meditations, through trainings you've been through, working with other people in different capacities and modalities, um, what's one of the more important things that you've learned kind of up to this point? We're always kind of evolving and learning new things, but up to this point, like what stands out or comes to your mind right now of like, yeah, this is kind of like the thing that's really important to you that you've learned.
Um, I think I don't think my answer is going to match. I mean, I'm hesitant to answer this. I don't know why. There's some resistance, but I think there's got to be, for me, there's got
Sure.
to be a balance between um being honest with yourself and your
Yeah.
trauma, and meditating and spirituality. I see a lot of clients who sometimes operate too much in the spiritual bypassing mode,
Mm.
where they're not slowing down and validating that being human is sometimes really hard.
Oh yeah.
And like feeling that emotion and letting the tears come out, because we're designed with tear ducts for a reason. So it's okay to cry. Like
Mhm.
I see a lot of clients, and I see it also in some of my spiritual groups, where they're just ultimately optimistic, which I don't want to fault them for that, but
Sure.
it's not slowing down and being truthful. Like sometimes life is hard, and that's okay to also just be honest about.
Oh yeah.
So a
Yeah.
balance, I guess, is like that. I think that's why I like being both a trauma therapist and a psychic medium. I really like the combination because I think it helps when I'm doing healing work in either way, in with either modality. It helps just having that energy. Like I can hold space for the traumas that this human has experienced, and also encourage its higher self along with its guides and my guides. And like there's something else going on at the same time, where we're also just like offering some healing with permission, of course.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, because it seems like a kind of like a big question, but yeah, it's sometimes the more simple answers are like, yeah, that's it. Like being honest with yourself, and yeah, things are tough here. It's very.
Yes.
I think the Buddha said that somewhere, right?
Yeah.
It's really tough here, even after enlightenment. Um, but yeah, I know like before I got into spirituality, life was very challenging. I was very lost and confused and depressed and just kind of really in the kind of lower dense energies.
Yeah.
And even after kind of doing spiritual work as a student, even as a teacher, can still be challenging.
Hmm.
That doesn't necessarily go away. It's just, oh, I know how to manage it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think honesty is huge, because like when you're not honest with yourself especially, but even others, it's then you get caught up in lies, or just things become more problematic, I think. So if you're honest with
Yeah.
yourself, it's like you save yourself a lot of hassle, and it's just, hey, this is what it is. That's okay.
I see that a lot of my somatic therapy work is, on an energy level, it's like validating that there might be this trauma memory in my body, and it might
Right.
feel really tight sometimes, and just like slowing down and noticing it with curious eyes rather than like annoyed that it's there.
Right.
That in itself can release some of it. It's just like, oh, it's kind of like I look at trauma in the body as like a toddler having a fit until it's finally paid attention to. And so it's like
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
so it just needs a little like validation, like, yeah, that was hard. And of course you're sticking around to make sure that you're seen. And so I've seen you,
Yeah.
and you don't have to keep jumping up and down anymore.
Right.
Um it's I'm not really sure where I was going with that, but it's important to like combine the two. Like spirituality, that's where I was getting at. Spirituality
Mm.
is really important, but so is just kind of like the trauma awareness and the validation in itself is really healing too. And I get this a lot with clients, where instead of just kind of like, I don't want to say owning it, but more of just like being real with like sometimes human interactions can trigger, right? Like
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
you're matched with somebody and like whatever they said triggers an old wound in you. Instead of like being honest and slowing down and being curious about that, they're like, well, they're a Taurus and I'm a this, and so that's why. And
Right.
I'm just like, or that is valid, and I don't like, I think that's a part of it, but or and it could also be that they triggered something that's unresolved in you, and maybe we can look at that together.
Right. That's so true. Yeah, I feel like the underlying thing we're talking about here, the honesty, but also kind of again that it's not just spiritual. I think some people can get caught of. Some people are, well, it's only the physical that's real and like logic and rational, logical, and then some people it's just all spirit and just
Yeah.
like, yeah, the body, ooh, that's gross. Like, you know, but learning how to like, how do we get these to come together as one, one.
Yeah.
That's a trick, but I think that's what we're here to do. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, but yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Um, I always like to ask this too: is there anything that we have not discussed that you're like, "Ah, I really wanted to talk about that? If there is something, great. If there's not, that's okay too. But sometimes if there's something I've just like missed, just to give you an opportunity.
Um, I definitely wanted to talk more about your trainings. I think
Mhm.
they're amazing and important. And again, like I've had a lot of trainings, and
Sure.
yours just felt like it was a good blend of things, a lot of science to it. I don't know how else to put it. Just a lot
Mhm.
of, just like I don't, not science, but just it was helpful for me to have all these experiences and also take other trainings to come into yours with a group of really cool people too that
Mhm.
really just took this stuff very seriously and was
Nice.
light about it too,
Yeah.
validating along the way, normalizing, and what I loved about it, and I don't know how else to put it, but you created an atmosphere where it nobody was like special, nobody was like the best psychic or they have this power.
Right.
Everybody has this ability,
Yep.
and your trainings are just like you all have this, and it's not like you're saying this, but like that's how I felt. Like the energy was like you all have this, and some people are more this way or the other. Nobody's better than one another, but like
Yep.
let's just keep practicing and pulling it out of each other and just see where we go, because that's just going to raise vibrations and heal everybody.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the. I'm sure I know other people are doing the same thing, but just hey, psychic. Everybody's psychic.
Hmm.
We can all do these things. It's not the special few that we hear about in the book or the you know on TV or whatever it is. It's just we can all do this, and just kind of realizing that. I think it's becoming people are becoming more waking up to this, which is fun to see like all the
Yeah.
stuff online now where it's like, wow, there's so much spirituality that's out there now. I'm like, finally, like let's
Yeah.
let's keep the ball rolling. This is great. We need this.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
love it. It's encouraging. And then that's actually how I found the Loving Heart Connection, which is like
Ah,
mixing EMDR. And so that's a bunch
yeah,
of
yeah.
therapists that are trauma therapists trained in mostly grief counseling.
Okay.
Um, but what's cool about that is it's also just like an area that I felt in that training of just like very normal to talk to people who are deceased. And here's like a tool that you can actually teach clients so they can do it on their own.
Mhm.
Um, that's not the only reason why she developed this modality, but a lot of it was like having a hard time hearing people who are heavily grieving paying thousands of dollars to mediums to do something that they could just do on their own, right?
Right. Okay, that's cool. So they were
Yeah.
teaching them how the person who's kind of in the grieving process, how to connect with the person that passed and
Uh-huh.
communicate with them. That's cool.
Yeah. Using
Yeah.
EMDR, so eye
Okay.
movement. So it's this whole thing that Jane, this is a weird story. So this is actually, I think, interesting to audience.
Okay.
So it's such a long story. I'm trying to make it short. I found out about the idea of like therapists also being mediums and having trainings
Mhm.
years ago when I was working with this like veteran focused um group. And there was a anyway, so I somebody like planted the seed, like you should look into this, right? There's other people
Right.
out there like you. So then
Mhm.
I found this book, um, was written by an LCSW, so a social worker who
Ah,
through like hypnosis and all this stuff discovered like people were having actual like meetings with deceased loved ones. So
ah,
she like created a so then through that this Jane Bissler like she was a part of that group and discovered doing EMDR work, which is a modality for trauma
mhm.
that with grief work with specifically parents who lost young children, that
Oh,
they were able to do the tapping and the eye movement until they were starting to have encounters with their
oh,
children.
wow.
So she created this whole their deceased children. Sorry,
Yeah,
you're
yeah. With the you said so the eye movement,
yeah.
was that did that intentionally was it intentional or did it just happen by itself? Because when
You'd
I
have to interview her. I think it happened on itself and she just kind of took it from there.
Yeah, because I mean that happens when we're in REM typically. I think our eyes
Hmm.
kind of flutter, and then like when I was, it will happen to me in meditation. Like when we get into like clairvoyant meditations and like a clairvoyant trance, sometimes my eyes will like flicker really fast, and I've seen it happen to students as well. So when you said that, I was like, ah, that sounds okay. It sounds like they're in a trance state of
Yeah.
some kind. So that's awesome. I think that could be so. That's the thing I love about this is sure I love to give readings or healings, but teaching the people like how they can do it themselves. It's like, hey, you can do this yourself. It's going to be such a more empowering experience if, like, yeah, like in this situation, you talk to the person that has passed and just have
Mhm.
this really healing moment. Like that could help them get through that process um a lot more grace, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and the
Yeah.
modality has helped me get through like hard times myself where I've just
Mhm.
been like, I'm going to talk to like a friend that passed away now because I know how to
Right.
do this in this way, which feels very, it's different than the mediumship that came naturally to me. It's a very specific protocol.
Mm,
It's really interesting, and she's doing a lot of research with it actually.
mm.
I think it's fascinating, and I think it is a gift to give to people who are grieving that are open to that instead of
Right.
them pouring out their pockets. Like, you know,
Right.
it's a lot of money to see these famous. I mean, and there's TV shows out there like with psychic medium stuff, and
Yep.
that's cool. Like, I don't want to diss that, but it's
Yeah, yeah.
those famous mediums are like $1,000 an hour or something crazy like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I know. That's yeah, I can imagine charging that, but yeah.
It's just icky. It feels icky because it's like this is something that everybody has a natural ability to do, and if we have the ability to teach somebody how to do it on their own, then we should. That's just like the loving thing to do.
Right, yeah. Yep.
And
Yeah.
still make some money off of it because we need to make a living, but like you don't have to be all crazy greedy about it.
Exactly, yeah. No, yeah, I think it's important because I know there's some people that might, okay, it's spiritual, like I should not charge anything, which is
Yeah.
totally fine. But yeah,
Yeah.
I agree that, if this is your, especially your main line of work or even something on the side, like, people value this stuff. This
Mhm.
is really helpful. So being able to get compensated for it. Um, yeah, I've had my own error in trying to charge too much and kind of knowing like this is probably not going to work, and it didn't work, and I'm just like, okay, I get the picture now. I'm not going down that road. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I get that. So with that said, do you want to talk a little bit about Approachable Healer? What you're currently offering, what's going on, and how do people connect with you?
Yeah. Approachable Healer. For a while I was jokingly calling it my side hustle, but now I'm like, I don't want to like cheapen it. Like it's my passion. It's
Right.
what I'd love to be doing full time.
Sure.
Um, and so uh it's basically utilizing everything I've learned in your courses and other courses. It's a mixture of, I also have Venus, this person that does Reiki, a part of Approachable Heal. So they do a lot of um they read cards and they do a lot of psychic work, they do a lot of Reiki. But
Hmm.
then with me, it's really loving heart connection, what I was trained in with Jane Bissler. So I
Hmm.
offer that. I offer um energy work, just reading into different things, like looking at pictures, what's blocking people from what they want. Sometimes people
Yep.
will sign up for a session and just like have a simple question that they want
Hmm.
me to look into with them, and then it
Yeah.
ends up being like 2 hours later we've done some table work healing. Like we just kind of, so like I put things up there as categories, but like when people sign up, it tends to always, it almost always becomes something very different from what they signed up for.
Yeah.
But we just go with the flow, and I meet them in person, hopefully. Sometimes I do virtual work, which is fine too.
Well.
But actually Loving Heart Connection works better virtually, so just want to throw that out there. But
Mhm.
it's just it's a modge podge of different healing modalities, and I try really hard to meditate and be prepared for whatever can come for whatever client signs up. So if some mediumship is needed, I'm
Mhm.
like in that trance state already to some degree. So I just,
Right.
when people sign up, I'm making sure that it's like during a time that I have a lot of time prior to prepare, and I think about it, and there's a lot of preparation. So um I like to throw that out there too. It's not like I'm back to back, you know, like a, psychic reading and then psychic reading, and it's more of just like
Uh,
I maybe will do two in a day. That's it.
yeah. I think like the old me had that thought of like, oh, I love doing readings. I want to break out and be a clairvoyant reader,
Hmm.
and oh, just doing back to back to back. And over time, I'm just like, oh my god, I don't know if I could. I'm sure I could do it. People can do that, but sometimes, yeah, one or two, like
Yeah.
That's enough for yourself or the people you work with. That's a lot of energy, and you're just like, whew, okay, I need
Yes.
a, I need a break.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, so
you
I
give a
offer a
lot.
lot. Yes, you
Yeah.
do. I'm always starving after.
Yeah.
like
When's the last time I ate? Oh my god.
like just ravenous. But yeah, I kind of try to like fine tune it to whatever people are coming for if I have, talents in that or trainings in it.
Sure.
Um, so I'm also running this is it in April 28th through the 30th. I'm running a healing retreat in Eau Claire,
Nice.
Wisconsin. So I'm hoping to do more of those under the name Approachable Healer and travel kind of around the Midwest because I've noticed there's not a whole lot of healing retreats in the Midwest. It's all in California or
Right.
right. So I'm just like I kind of want to bring more of an affordable, approachable
There you go.
healing workshop, weekend retreat, or just a 4 hour workshop or something, just kind of in this Midwest area.
Mhm.
So that's also under Approachable Healer, and there'll be more workshops talking more about like negative core beliefs and how it gets in your way of manifesting.
Mhm.
Um, just pulling from both worlds, the trauma healing world and what I know about that, and also the spiritual world, and just combining that in a way where it's really helping people kind of live happier lives, essentially.
Yeah. That's so awesome. Um, Last question here. And they can reach you at approachablehealer.com.
Mhm.
That website, yeah. Um, what's a common or maybe two common things that people come to you to get read? I know understand like the healing or the mediumship might be a deceased loved one they want to get in touch with.
Yeah.
But like, what's a common question you get, say, for like a reading? Like, oh, is it relationships or health or money or what stands out to you?
It's a lot of career stuff and grief. And
Oh, okay.
not necessarily, what's been interesting, they're not coming directly to talk to deceased loved ones. It's grief energy. It's
Mm,
like I can't like just like is this like a medical condition? Should I go to the doctor, or is this just like heavy grief energy and just kind of healing a little bit of that? And then a lot of psychoeducation around what grief does to the body, right? It's like
yeah.
really you're in a lot of stress in your body without realizing it when you have heavy emotions like that. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's a lot of career confusion. I get a lot of creative types that are like stuck in corporate America but wish they were the musician they always wanted to be. I get a
Yeah.
lot of that, and it's just like finding the balance but also being realistic about like the lifestyle they still want to live.
Right.
So just like kind of seeing with where they're at now, like where the blocks are, clearing things with permission, and then seeing like, well, if you chose this route, it could look like this, but of course that can change. Like I'm really clear about like I can't predict the future in the way that you see in Hollywood,
Right.
but we can look at like possibilities and outcomes with where you're at right now.
Yeah. That's really well put. Awesome.
Mhm.
That's really cool. Yeah, so everyone go check out her website, approachablehealer.com. You're on Instagram. I
Mhm.
can link that below as well.
Sure.
Is there any other ways to get in touch with you, or is those the two main ways you think that are best?
That's probably the best way is
Okay,
Approachable Healer or Instagram. Yeah.
awesome. Okay, sounds good. Jenny, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show and talk with you. Feel like I get to know you a little bit more now, and thank you for being you and sharing what you have to offer and give to everybody in the world. So thanks
Yeah.
for shining.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Feel free to leave a comment, and if there's anything you found interesting, want to talk about, leave it in the comments. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Take care.